I had so much fun interviewing Sayre. She is a self-defense coach who interviewed over 400 people to really understand what self-defense is and pick the best knowledge from each individual. So she is a wealth of knowledge, and she keeps adding her expertise and keep digging deeper and deeper and really understands what women's self-defense is about. Also, she's mom, and she says, you know what, we all women build our own safety system, and we got to trust that. So she's somebody who I love chatting with and getting to know, and I hope you enjoy her interview. So hit the cue and enjoy the show. So the big question is this: why well-being conscious women just like us who want to live a healthy and happy life are constantly feeling vulnerable, like, what if I get attacked? And so many people who teach self-defense are tough men or martial artists who don't seem to understand what women really go through every day. How can we feel safer and be more confident in our personal safety? That is the question, and this channel gives you the answer. My name is KINKO Hamilton, and welcome to Rise Up Against Violence. All right, ladies, today I'm so excited to introduce you Sayre. And I came to know her through, again, the Women's Self-Defense Summit. You know, that summit was really awesome. That really brought so many incredible women, female instructors, self-defense teachers, coaches together. And Kelly is one of them. She joined the summit, and I got to know her. I found her on Instagram as well. She's beautiful. She's amazing. She is well-spoken. And you know what's really resonated with me is the fact that she understands what I'm trying to do through this channel. There's so many self-defense channels out there. Yes, man to man, pound to pound, you know, do this elbow and all that. Yes, while it's so important, how violence looks is slightly, or if not completely different towards women. So with that being said, I would love to bring Sayre to you. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, so excited to have you. So Kelly, I mean, I feel like I've known you for such a long time because we've been, you know, on Instagram and following each other and learning from each other. But tell us how you started your self-defense journey.
Well, it's pretty simple, actually. I took a self-defense class, kind of to your point in the beginning here, and it was an all physical. It was fantastic. It was great. I got to hit bags and, you know, kick things. And at the very end, the instructor said, "This is great. You guys did fantastic. Keep in mind that you want to try to avoid a physical confrontation if possible. So you need to be situationally aware." And then they sent us on our way. And I feel like I've said that story 100 times, but it's very true in the fact that that's really what was the tipping point for me saying, well, what do you mean situationally aware? A lot of times we say things and assume that people know what we mean. And if we've done it subconsciously, it's hard to put it into words and explain it to teach others. Mm-hmm. So that really started my journey of teaching myself. And I'm sure a lot of parents out there can understand right now with distance learning, yes, that all of our kids are doing, or a lot of kids are doing, and college students, is it's really on you. It's your responsibility to teach yourself. And so I started calling people, you know, Google searches, asking for informational interviews via LinkedIn, reading books, just like reading textbooks in college, and pushing and asking, well, where can I get this type of training? Yes, I see that you have it geared towards military or law enforcement, or maybe more of that male focus. That's who was typically at that time who I could find teaching specifically situational awareness, and very preventative, what to look for, how to read body language, signs, how people will test your boundaries verbally. And again, why I'm so glad you're doing this is because violence looks different for women. There are different tactics used very subtly to test boundaries that unless you're the target of that specific violence, you can't quite understand the nuances of what it looks like. And so while everyone I spoke with on my journey of gaining knowledge was, yeah, exactly, this is great, phenomenal. And when I said, okay, where can I go get this training? They were like, that's a good question. I don't know. Because a lot of the military and law enforcement training is close to civilians, understandably. So it was a lot of self-taught and a lot of research. But one thing that I say when people say, okay, well, what's your experience? Where's your degree or your, acronym of certification? I've been a woman my whole life. And so I have experienced having to deal with people pushing my boundaries since I was a little girl. And I didn't realize all of the mechanisms I put into place or I created to protect myself until I started this journey and going, oh, wait, okay. I remember doing that in college. Oh, wait, I did that in high school. Wait a minute. I remember that in elementary school, and so then it really comes down to life experience, the school of hard knocks. And I know we're going to dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But through that process of meeting people, networking, asking questions, not quitting, looking for knowledge, is I found the 500 Rising training, Tammy McCracken, and that it's exactly what I was looking for. And I have not seen anything like it in my 4 years of research. So.
Okay, so that's very interesting. I'll have 2 questions, Kelly. So first thing is that I totally get it. Like, yes, I've been a woman too, since I was born, right? Then yes, like you said, like we have our own systems, I should say, to protect ourselves because our parents didn't teach us. We didn't learn at school. We didn't even, there's no club or right anything that taught us that, so we had to kind of create it for ourselves. So I want to ask you, what kind of system, like mechanism you said that you created for yourself? Then the second thing is 500 Rising. Tell me more about it.
So I really focus on observing our surroundings and using all of our senses. A lot of times when we say observe, we think of sight. And I've really kind of done the deep dive on, well, hearing, your sense of smell, even your sense of feel or touch. And because I'm trying to be more aware of all of my senses, I notice little things. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Side note, we're doing a bunch of remodeling at home and we had started ripping up some of the carpeting on our stairs, and we had just cleared one stair off to see, well, what's underneath? What does it look like? And I was walking up the stairs, and because it was carpet, and then all of a sudden hard floor, like I tripped. And I was like, oh yeah, your sense of touch can be that sensitive and can inform you, okay, something's not right in your environment. And like I use the sense of taste, because we can get really tunnel visioned on thinking about strictly physical, like attacks by another human, a predator. But really, situational awareness and all of your senses, your intuition, is strictly survival. It's all about keeping you alive. And so I use the example of taste. Okay, if you are eating something or you pour yourself a glass of milk and you go to taste and it doesn't taste right, your body reacts and says, oh, something's not right, because it doesn't want you to get sick. It doesn't want you to get food poisoning. So when you look at your senses as simply informing everything that's going on in your environment, oh, okay, then you start to notice sounds differently. And I point out, again, I have small children. I know exactly where they are in the house by how their footsteps sound. I know if they're going in the pantry for snacks because of the cupboard door creaking, the sound that it makes. And I don't have to be anywhere in the room. It's simply hearing. Then understanding, okay, so we're getting all of that information talk about cognitive overload. All of your senses, all of that information has to go through a filter or you would go crazy. And so that's that subconscious, your heuristics, that quick decision-making skill that sends the intuition signal. It says, well, something's off. We don't know if it's bad, good, but just something's off. And that sends you an alert. And depending on what's going on or why you're getting that signal, sometimes we don't always know exactly which sense told us something was off. We don't exactly know what we may have saw, heard. We just know our intuition is saying, hey, pay attention, come back to present. And depending on the message of intuition, if it's just well, that was weird, might not be anything, to a sense of fear, the chill up our spine, just the pit in our stomach. And I always say, respond and react. Maybe take a pause because you want to make sure you're getting to safety, not just away from danger, but get that moment of saying, okay, I'm fully present, fully aware, and now I need to get to safety and go. Because even if your intuition was wrong, doesn't matter, you're still safe. It's okay to be wrong because you're still safe. I wouldn't want you to be, oh yeah, there was danger and I didn't pay attention to my intuition. Another thing for women that a lot of times doesn't get factored into self-defense classes is that we have our kids with us, and small children can't just run. Or we joke and we tell people not to carry heavy handbags or heavy purses and it's like, I'm a mom. I have to have snacks, a sippy cup, diaper wipes, on top of my self-defense tools that I have to make sure my kids don't get. There's so many factors as a woman that I have to think of. And it's not going to do any good for me to panic and to get really excited if there's something going on. I need to stay calm to keep my kids calm. And I need to be able to communicate, hey, it's not time to ask questions because kids are very inquisitive. It's time to move. It's time to go. And so I need to have not only awareness for myself, but awareness of where are my kids at? Are they frozen? Did they go into a freeze state because they heard a loud noise that they don't know what it is? And I can't necessarily explain it all, because then if I scare them or cause fear, they may freeze up even more or start panicking, crying. And depending on the situation, you may not want them to make a lot of noise. So again, we talk about, I'm not saying that that's not dads, or that doesn't happen when fathers are out with their kids. But again, we're focused on women. And if we're going to be honest, we have to talk about that honest conversation. If I've got a diaper bag in my handbag and I'm pushing a stroller and I have a screaming kid, it's going to be really hard to be aware. So what are things I can do to keep myself safer and pre-plan or have a mental plan?
Yeah. That's a very good point that you brought up, Kelly. And I have two boys. They're now 12 and 6. But when the older one was, since, he was young, I was born and raised in Japan, so I speak Japanese, and my boys too. So when I see something like weird going on, or something like feel danger, like, or even maybe cars driving by, or there's a weird guy walking by, or crazy person going like this, we have a code word. I mean, I say it in Japanese, like keep tight, like stay close. I say that in Japanese, then they know what that means. So that means they go like this, and it come behind me, or next to me, right? And they know. And then I give them instructions. So something like that, like I strongly suggest moms to have that conversation with the kid, even though they're small. Like my son understood that when he was 2 or 3. Hugo, and I said in Japanese, he goes, like, I know it takes time for some kids, especially mine have ADHD and it's going crazy, but yeah. I think that's something that's important for mothers and women to do so. But Kelly, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, not at all. That's a fantastic point, and one that I also talk about. Find a code word that isn't necessarily a scary word. You don't want to be like fire. For us, not that I want to give away our code word, but I always say use a weather terminology that could not possibly relate to where you live. So I
Oh,
might
that's interesting.
avalanche, because there's no, where I live, no way possible that an avalanche, but it's not scary. It's, something that if they heard that word, that they would say, okay, mom said the word, we just need to come closer to her and we need to be quiet and pay attention. Kind of like you said, for further instructions, wait for further instructions. But again, it doesn't necessarily strike fear. It's almost like, okay, mom has something to tell us that's important.
Right. I love that weather. I'm going to say maybe tsunami.
There you go. Yeah, whatever works. The important thing is don't pick a word that you would say on a regular basis. Don't say Lego, because then I have 2 boys as well. If I said Legos every time, or if that was our code word, my kids would not pay attention. They would simply be like, what, where's Legos? Because they love it.
Yeah.
So it's very important to think through that and kind of test yourself and say, well, if it was in this situation and I said it, would there be any confusion? That's important. And then the final aspect that I really hone in on with women, because again, not saying that men don't have this, challenge either in their life, but women have a lot of things running through their head every day. We've got a lot to do, and we typically put our needs on the back burner because we are caretakers. We are taking care of others. It's in our nature to do that a lot of times in general. So for me to say, okay, now you need to go out and spend hours and weeks, months, years training to learn how to be safer, it can be overwhelming. It's the sense of trying to climb the mountain or eat the whole elephant. When really, if I can break it down and show you all the skills that you use every day can be used in your personal safety. You just have to look at it.
Right, Kelly. That's exactly right. I preach it. Like totally, I preach it. Yes.
I like to use, because I came from the business world and a lot of service industry. So reading people, reading body language, very important. And the networking, the 7-second rule. People form an opinion of you in 7 seconds. And, studies changed and updated, but still it happens really fast. And so in high school, in college, I remember classes and training on how to have a good first impression, walk with your head up, shoulders back, smile, look welcoming. Well, the same thing goes for predators. People waiting and picking their next victim are judging you and are profiling you, whether or not you're an easy target or a hard target, and whether they should, nope, not going to pick her. I'll wait for the next one. And so I talk about that. It's like, oh, see, it's like interchangeable. So don't be overwhelmed. Don't think you have to climb the whole mountain. Start doing daily habits. Start making little tweaks and practicing it every day. One thing that I conquered the, lock my car doors every time I'm in it. I do that automatically now, and you could laugh, but I am trying to remember what my kids wear every day. What did their clothing look like? Could I describe my kids if something happened and they said, what was your kid wearing? And I will be completely honest, a lot of days I'm like, oh my goodness, was that yesterday or was that today that they were wearing their Spider-Man shirt?
Yeah.
Because as a mom, I'm doing a million things. I'm getting their, breakfast, we've got to get the dog fed, got to get up. I've got to get ready. And I'm just checking to make sure they have clothes on. I'm not really looking specifically what they're wearing. I just want to make sure they have clothes on. So that's a simple little thing of me trying to remember and being able, that memory and awareness, getting in that habit. I had a friend reach out and say every day they do like a selfie shot. And that's a reminder, or that's kind of a daily, this is what my kids are wearing, this is what they most recently looked like. And because you're doing selfie, you can do it in a fun way. It's not scary. It's not something that takes a lot of time. It's digital, so it goes to the cloud. Should you happen to lose your phone for any reason that day, you can always pull that information and you can delete it. So there's things like that, that having these conversations helps other people go, huh, well, that's something simple I can do that could greatly impact. And it becomes a snowball effect that you start making more and more daily habits that increase your personal safety. And pretty soon you don't even realize it, but you're much more aware of your surroundings and you feel more confident. And we don't necessarily talk about walking down the street safely. That doesn't make headlines, but you'll start to feel safer going and doing things that you love to do because you have confidence in your own skills and know that you can recognize signs, early warning signs of potential danger.
Yeah, and also, Kelly, it's because we became more aware of it, and we can teach our kids to become more aware of it too, right? So it just, blows my mind that some people just let the kids go walk with the phone in hands, and even this little one is in a stroller, this baby has, baby's having iPad or all stuff like that. I mean, those things, I tell my people all the time, like, those things, you have to take it away because it's not necessary. And, you're kind of taking the joy of finding out what's going on around you or what's going on around your children away from them. So, that's one of the things that we kind of, I know it's an internet world and
right. It's a
we
digital
cannot live
world.
without the
Yeah.
phone, but that's something that we can teach ourselves first and then teach our kids too, because we don't want to raise them as the one that always doing this, right? Like in terms of self-awareness and situational awareness, you're not going to have any of that when you're doing the focus on this.
Right. And again, it doesn't have to always be watching for danger.
Yeah.
Being curious about your world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Learning, seeing how, like, I try and call out, oh, isn't that sunrise gorgeous when we're going to the bus stop? Like I try and call it out, or, hey, look at the eagle. Oh, look, there's deer. Stuff like that, where you point out things and it keeps them curious about the world. And then they ask questions. And again, it doesn't have to be look for scary, look for danger. It can be, and you can play those games with your kids to keep them occupied. When I'm in the grocery store, I have almost 8-year-old and 9-year-old boys. So they're very rambunctious, which I was totally laughing when you were talking about it. I'm like, yep, I get that. But we go grocery shopping and all I need to do to keep them engaged and to keep them somewhat contained is say, okay, in this aisle, we're looking for the peanut butter. Find our peanut butter, guys. And so it keeps them focused and it keeps them looking versus, well, what about this? And distracted. So you can play games, make little games out of it to keep them alert and aware, where's the exit? If you make it fun, not only for yourself, because nobody wants to do something if you're dreading it, but if you make it fun for yourself too, you can learn a lot. And again, stay more on that curious side. It doesn't have to be scary.
Yeah. It's your safety and your family's safety. And if you can make it fun, they can learn faster, and that will, has a lasting effect. So Kelly, let's change the gear a little bit and then let's talk about 500 Rising project.
Yes. No, and I will be the first to say the first training was this past June of 2020. So I am an endorsed level instructor. So that means I'm starting the certification process. I'm working my way up to a certified instructor. So I definitely am not the expert, but I do want to talk about it because, as I mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time looking for trainings that had that basis of what real violence looks like to women. And so I do have, so Tammy McCracken, I am a big believer in, if you keep pushing and you stay consistent, you're going to find what you're looking for. If you put it out to the universe enough, the universe will let you know. And, I started this journey and I was connected to somebody, and then they connected me to somebody. And then I went to a violence dynamics training here in Minnesota. And that's where I met Tammy. And then through that, she's like, hey, I'm starting this 500 Rising program training for women self-defense. And so I don't get it wrong. She has 30 years as a licensed professional counselor working across the spectrum in trauma, violence, and recovery, both victims and offenders, actually, which is very fascinating when you think about it. We need to understand the criminal mindset to help mitigate the damage. And she earned the expert rank in Krav Maga in Israel and served as the International Women's Division Coordinator for Krav Maga Global. So to me, I'm a super fan of Tammy. She's got the psychology, the mental piece of it, the human behavior aspect, and she's got the physical self-defense, like hear me roar aspect, and is able to combine them. And she's a continual learner. So she is one of those people that doesn't sit and tell you, well, this is exactly what it is. She actually enjoys conversation and debate where you say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense to me. And blessing in disguise, because I don't have a martial arts background, zero. So I come at it, and when they're like, okay, you just do this, this, and this, I'm like, wait, I don't get it. And so I can come and say, oh, yeah, that's okay. We're using verbiage, or we're using, descriptions that work in martial arts, but to the average everyday woman who we're trying to help, this may not make sense. So we may have to find a different analogy or a different metaphor.
Okay, so tell me more about it. So you mentioned that I'm a martial artist and you are not, right?
Yes.
So I'm used to getting beat up, getting bruised, more bruises. Today, like I did a crazy killer tactical fitness workout yesterday. So my body is completely sore and I'm walking like this, and it's normal to me. But
and right now I'm having so many jealousy because I like to lift weights and I haven't been able to work out for a while.
Yeah.
Like a year. And I'm like, oh, it's all flubby. I'm like, oh, I miss being sore.
I know. But so for normal, I'm not abnormal, so I'm not gonna say normal, but like the
Average
general
every
public,
day.
general public, they're not used to do like, just walk hard until you're sore and you can't move anymore, right? So what are those moves that 500 Rising teach, or you teach to the woman?
Yeah.
The most common attacks, so common fear that we have, right? For let's say one of the fear we have, that all women have, is what if I get attacked, right?
Yeah.
What if I get attacked in the dark or in a parking garage?
Yeah.
And stuff like that, right? So what are the moves that you teach, for example?
Well, and one thing I'll call out specifically is the hair pull. I get it that more men are wearing ponytails now and they have longer hair, but so often, because they don't think about hair, that they don't think, oh, that's really important to talk about. And, I, as a little girl, I had my ponytail tugged by my brother, and so what do? We pull back against it. Well, that might not necessarily be the answer. And so again, it all depends. Again, and that it's hard to get into a physical, description when we're talking.
Well, let's say that
it's a lot of that of like, okay, choke. If you're in a choke, if you're a guy choking me, I might not have the strength to do this for you, or I might not have this. There might be other things I need to do. Exactly. And so I love Tammy's aspect is like, okay, let's play. We talk about playing and games. Okay. She goes, trust me, it's not soft touch. This is, you're going to have your hair pulled and you got to get out of it. Here, try this. Did that work for you? Oh, your arms are a little bit shorter. Okay, let's try this. Oh, no, this is, whatever, maybe you have a shoulder problem, from carrying that heavy purse. So we need to make adjustments. And that's really
good. I love it.
the basis of the training. And again, okay, if we're going to talk about the way violence looks in a real way, we have to talk about that most women know their attacker, whether that's their classmates who, let's face it, if we've said don't talk to strangers and we've never taught people how to recognize behaviors that are warning signals, they go from a world, and I get, again, there's outliers to all of this, so I'm generalizing. But you go from a world where you grew up with the same people in elementary, middle school, high school, and, or, you know, in a community where people knew, oh, I know your uncle, I know your aunt, I know your cousin. Like, you kind of had this familiarity. And then you go to college and all of a sudden everyone is a stranger. So what constitutes strange behaviors? Because what Bobby did wasn't strange because that was Bobby, you know. He was always really nice. He would come shovel your grandma's driveway in the winter, or Susie was always, you know, bringing over extra cookies when she baked. That's not unusual, even if you didn't ask. But now Jimmy, who sits in your class, is constantly bringing you gifts or doing nice things for you after you've repeatedly told him no thanks. Okay, that's not respecting your boundaries. But if you grew up thinking, well, Bobby and Susie always did that back home because they were kind, now all of a sudden, Jimmy, well, he's just being kind. He's just bringing me, you know, a candy bar or an extra soda, or he's bringing me pencils or a highlighter or whatever it may be, even though you've said no. You didn't understand. No, that's not respecting your boundary. It's him manipulating kindness to use that against you. And so that's the kind of thing, is all of a sudden we're not talking about those little drips. Well, that's Jimmy testing your boundaries. Why? You know, all of a sudden Jimmy's offering to walk you back to your apartment or walk you back to your dorm room when you've said no. How do you enforce that boundary? Oh, well, he's just being a gentleman. He's just being so charming to walk me back so I'm safe. And if you think that I'm, you know, if people listening to this right now think that I'm being overzealous or I'm making up, no, I can point to an exact case that happened here at our campus during freshman orientation, where a nice guy offered, who this woman had been hanging out during, you know, one of the social activities, super great, offered to walk her back to her dorm room so she'd be safe, and then raped her brutally 4 hours in her dorm, in her locked dorm room. And so that's where I'm like, we need to talk about that's manipulating kindness. And what are those behaviors to watch for? And with the 500 Rising training, we have those uncomfortable discussions. Like I said, I've had one training and because of COVID, you know, we're hoping to get the next training in June of 2021. So this coming early summer. But I really appreciate what you're doing, KINKO, because you're bringing the conversation to light. And one thing that I wish was more in the self-defense industry, that is more of that conversation, more of that debate, you know. And with male self-defense instructors, I don't think that you don't know what you're doing. I simply think you haven't had the opportunity to have a discussion that didn't get defensive or accusatory of, this is what violence looks like to women. Quite honestly, this is how this is manipulated. And when you say, don't worry about being kind, don't worry about being thought of as being rude. Okay, that's really easy to say until the predator or the person targeting you is the friend of your boyfriend and is part of the circle. So now, do you call him out and cause rifts in the social fabric of the group? It's different and it's tough and it's difficult to deal with. And so having that conversation is how we're going to improve the way self-defense is taught to women. And women, we are really good at collaborating. In fact, we tend to enjoy collaborating, working as a team, and communicating. So just keep doing what comes naturally to us, our skills that we already have in personal safety.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's why I started this channel. I mean, you know, I have such a great relationship with my coach. who taught me the street fighting self-defense system. So, you know, we were fighting. I was being attacked by 6 men. I mean, training, right? But
Yeah.
6 men coming to you in the woods, and the roots are going there, and you know, or even in the mud or stuff like that, right? So I've been through those trainings, and
Well, and we're not always going to be wearing yoga pants. We're not going to be wearing tennis shoes when we get to
yeah,
attack.
exactly.
We're not going to be on a nice, comfy mat.
No,
It's not where you want to be attacked.
no, exactly.
And like to your point about getting beat up and stuff, when I went, violence dynamics was my first real big self-defense training, and it was awesome. But on the first day, I stood up and said, I have 0 self-defense experience other than 1 class, and I've never done martial arts, but my brother and I kicked the crap out of each other growing up. And so that's one thing too, I think for women is like, it doesn't have to be this perfect choreographed move. In fact, I don't care if it's
Never
ugly.
is.
Yeah,
Never
I
is.
don't care if it's ugly. And if you would see CCTV video later and you're like, oh my gosh, I did the windmill. I pulled out the windmill. Where did that come from? You know, or just flailing arms. Did you survive? Are you alive? Well, then you know what? Nailed it. As Randy King likes to say, nailed it. That's all that matters. There's no wrong way to survive. So I want women also to realize you don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to have this perfect hook, you know, right hook. In fact, an open-handed slap to their ear would be pretty effective. And so that again is okay. If we talk about that, you and I might know that and be like, well, yeah, but if we're not saying it out loud, then the everyday average person, man or woman, might never think about that.
That's the thing, because when I started, you know, this self-defense journey, like when I really started teaching was like 2 years ago, right? And I started with my friends first, and they're like, no, like that's not for me. Like you can,
Yes.
you
Like,
can do
oh,
it because because you're like, you know, martial artist and you're always doing stuff. And no, it's not for me. Like that's what everybody thinks, right? And the beginning, I have so many moms came to me because they wanted it me to teach their daughters, but they
Yes.
thought it's
Oh,
more
yeah.
like punch and kick and stuff like that. So I said, no, I don't teach that. I mean, I teach that, but there's much more before we get into the physical training. And then some people like, oh, I thought that's all about, you know, doing this and knee kicking and stuff like that. So I'm like, no, I mean, but my point is, we are also, the women have to become aware of what personal safety is and self-defense is, because it's really not about punching and kicking while it's important. So
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to do this show and just, you know, like you said, bring up the conversation, talk about something, like ask questions, right? Like you said, the person, like I was molested by this person who was coming to our house when I was small, then talk about Jesus, okay? Talk about God, and
Right.
molested me under the table because I was so small to even think about it. And then when I started, you know, really going through like not healing process, but self-defense journey. Oh my God, that's what it was. I knew there was something wrong, but I didn't want to tell that person to put the hand, you know, put the hand away, or couldn't tell my parents, right? Stuff like that. So, yeah, there are just definitely those things part missing. And so I'm just so glad you shared that with us, you know, your experience and what you're doing to really encourage us to increase an awareness about self-defense. So Kelly, with that being said, unfortunately our interview time is getting close to the end. So I have to ask you this ultimate question. The ultimate question is, what would you say to a woman to overcome what if I get attacked fear?
Got it. So that's a good one. That is a really good question. I would tell her, believe in yourself. You're more resilient than you give yourself credit for. You have probably been through a lot of stuff in your life that you have, quote unquote, survived or impacted, and it was really hard and you got through it. So while the fear of being attacked might seem big and looming, have that confidence in yourself that you're worth fighting for, that you can do damage, and that you will get through it. Because, you know, the quote that I love, fear does not stop death, it stops life. And I'm like, I want to tell the listeners right now, do not take this out of context, but we are all going to die. At some point, some way, we are all going to die. And I know that when I look back, I will only regret the things I didn't do, or the places I didn't go visit. And if I didn't do that because I was afraid of what might happen, that's not how I want to live my life. So.
Awesome. All right, Kelly, Sayre, thank you so much for being with us. And I'm looking forward to your growth and more things you do to help us be and feel safer. All right, thanks again. Would you like to get the advices from the world's top self-defense experts? If so, go and get your pass from www.womensselfdefensesummit.com.